I would like to call the budget meeting of December 4th, 2024 to order. Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Reimer, Chair of the Budget Committee and Councillor of Ward 4. I would like to begin this evening by reading a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate council chambers to the nearest exit through the chamber doors and obey all instructions given. And if assistance is required, please see the Deputy Clerk. Once you've evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of Town Hall. Also, please ensure to place your cell phones on silent or they're turned off. And lastly, the Town of Lincoln Council meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. Closed captioning is available on all our videos by selecting the closed captioning button on the bottom right of the video. Roll call this evening. Members of committee are in attendance in person and remotely. Vice Chair Russell should be joining us shortly. We also have staff in attendance. Thank you for being here this evening. Welcome to the residents in the chambers this evening as well. Mr. CEO, we should have sold tickets, I think, to tonight's event. But number 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from committee this evening? Seeing none. Confirmation of agenda number 4. Do members have any amendments to the order of the agenda? Number 5, statutory public meetings. We have no statutory public meetings this evening. Delegations. Number 6 on our agenda, we have no delegations. Number 7, our consent agenda. We have no consent agenda items. And we slide into number 8, our regular agenda for this evening. We are now considering item 8.1, Report FN-23-24, 2025 Amended Operating Budget. Our CEO will provide introductory comments. Mike, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, everyone. I do want to thank everyone for being here this evening as we look to finalize our budget for the upcoming year. I know that the process has been challenging, and I do want to acknowledge and thank members of council, the community, and staff for the deliberations and the hard work that went into getting us where we've been. Council will recall we were in front of you over the last number of weeks, and you've sent us back. You looked to us to make some tough decisions in light of some of the economic pressures that we're facing, and there was council direction given. While these cuts were necessary, I want to emphasize, because I was asked the question, they weren't easy, and that they were made with careful consideration and focus on maintaining our core values and long-term goals. Key ones included delaying some studies and, generally speaking, deferring some hiring decisions. The purpose of today, and Charlotte will take you through this presentation, is to review the final budget after the adjustments have been made and ultimately gain consensus on moving forward. I want to thank staff at all levels for the collaboration in this process. I will have comments to make later on in the process. I don't want to steal Charlotte's thunder, but a big chunk of what you see in the budget this year is really us putting money in the bank. I think it's important for us to save and look to invest in infrastructure, and no better way to do that than putting money in the bank. But I will turn it over to Charlotte to begin with an overview of the final budget adjustments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments, Mike. Charlotte, please go ahead with your presentation this evening.
Thank you, and good evening, Chair and members of committee. I'm happy to have my thunder stolen, but yes, we are here this evening to review the 2025 tax levy operating budget and the adjustments that are being proposed to that budget. So what are we discussing today? We will review the committee direction that we received at the November 25th meeting. We will review the 2025 operating budget proposed adjustments, discuss the operational impact of the proposed adjustments, and then we'll review understanding property tax and the blended rate, and a final review of the 2025 proposed tax levy, which has been adjusted, as well as the budget schedule. So the direction that was received at the November 25th Budget Committee of the Whole, at that meeting, the tax levy supported 2025 draft operating budget was presented in detail. Committee directed staff as follows: to refer the parking study to the 2026 budget year for consideration, to delay vacant staff full-time equivalent, or FTE hirings until the end of Q2 2025 in an effort to lower the tax levy impact. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, and the CAO will be available to address questions at the end, because it will be a little bit more intricate than just deferring all hirings until Q2. We're going to have to look position by position because some are legislated and there are some complications there. And then to provide a tax levy operating budget update to committee. Staff have prepared an amended draft budget for committee consideration, including the items directed above, as well as some adjustments and suggestions that have arisen since draft budget preparation. So this slide is a list of all the adjustments that we're proposing. So as directed by committee to delay staff FTE hirings for savings of about $156,000. We also, after budget preparation, received the announcement of our WSIB rate. So the rate is being reduced, and that will save us approximately $51,000. Reduced overtime budget in Public Works winter control for $10,000. Increased external funding applied to road safety initiatives, $25,000. The parking study being deferred for net savings of $37,500. Reduced budget for climate change work plan, $10,000. Reduced budget for heritage designations, $20,000. The Niagara irrigation project being split between 2025 and 2026, which will push $25,000 to next year. Canceling the budget survey flyer mail-out for $3,500. We had our OMF grant announcement, and it's higher than our initial estimate by $14,000. However, we've also been reviewing our property tax write-offs from the Assessment Review Board, and we're recommending an increase in that budget of $30,000, so that's an increased expense. And then we also have increased penalty and interest on property tax, which is a revenue of $20,000. So the total reduction from all of those items in the tax levy increase is $342,313. For the average residential household with an assessed value of $383,000, compared to the draft operating budget that was presented on November 25th, this is a decrease of 1.42% in the town portion of the property tax bill, a decrease of 0.53% of the total property tax bill, and it amounts to a decrease of $29 for the year for the average household. So I think it's important when we review those budget adjustments that we also talk about the operational impact of those adjustments, because it does have an impact on us. In terms of the position gapping and delaying hiring, it ultimately reduces the amount of work that can be accomplished. So I'll share the notes, and then, as I said, I know the CAO will be available for questions after the presentation. The CAO will work with department directors to ensure major work remains underway, but will prioritize other work plan items because of hiring delays. The CAO will also work with the department directors in CLT, including HR, to recruit certain positions that are legislated, mandated, or already in the recruitment process and too late to retract. So I think it's important that we highlight the fact that we have received this direction from committee. Some positions are already significantly along in the process. Some positions cannot be delayed until Q2, but the goal is that the CAO will meet the target. So we already had gapping dollars in the budget, about just over $44,000. So in total, this is $200,000 of gapping. So he'll meet that target. It just may be different from one position to another. The WSIB rate reduction is a result of the recent provincial announcement, and so it has no operational impact. The reduced overtime estimate for winter control may result in budget pressure depending on the type of winter season we experience. However, the town has started to contribute a small amount to a reserve fund for winter maintenance, and it could be used to offset a small variance. So we don't necessarily have enough in that reserve yet where I would say that we're ready for major unanticipated winter weather, but we do have a little bit in there, and so we could use that to try to offset a small variance. Use of the Vision Zero Road Safety Initiative funding will be used for related expenditures, but would be town-initiated rather than partnership with the region. And so what I mean by that is that originally we were going to take a portion of the funding and apply it to our road safety initiatives, and then keep a portion in a reserve to partner with the region on those initiatives. And what we're doing instead is to retain it and use it all for our road safety initiatives. But it always has to be road safety. That's the requirement. And the deferral of the parking study could have an impact on residents who are concerned with parking capacity. However, it would allow council to determine whether plans at the former BDSS site would have any impact on townwide plans as a whole. The budget reduction for climate change and heritage designations in the planning department will have an impact, but there will be some budget retained as well. So climate change is decreasing from 30,000 to 20,000, heritage from 80,000 to 60,000. Staff have confirmed that the payment for Niagara Irrigation Partnership of 50,000 can be split between 2025 and 2026, so it doesn't really have an operational impact, but it does mean it's going to impact next year's budget because these items that we're pushing out will then be added next year. Committee feedback from our recent meetings regarding the 2025 budget survey results indicated the need for improvement. Therefore, the flyer will not be mailed out, and consideration can be given towards engagement methods. So we're removing the flyer with small savings. The Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund grant increase was announced greater than estimate, so it's a small increase, but that has no operational impact. We do have a negative budget impact from anticipated property tax write-offs, but I do want to emphasize that those are a result of decisions by the Assessment Review Board. They're nothing we can control, but we do have to budget for them because it's an expense that's going to happen. So we've just been looking at the historical as well as our at-risk amounts, and we just think we need additional budget on that line. The increased penalty and interest on taxes is ultimately not desirable, so this is not the way we want to be earning money on unpaid property tax balances, but we are making additional collection efforts, and based on recent actuals, we think that a small additional increase is reasonable. And generally, just as a reminder, similar to what I said about the $25,000 being deferred to next year, anything here that's temporary, that's just temporarily being reduced or deferred, it is going to put pressure on 2026. So I just want to make sure I'm very transparent about that. That doesn't come as a surprise next year, that most of these costs, we're taking them and shifting them to next year. So to review the property tax and blended rate calculation, we've seen this pie chart many, many times. The combination of the region, town, and education tax rates are often referred to as the blended tax rate. Often when calculating the estimated change in property tax from one year to the next, it is referred to as the blended increase. Blended property tax rates basically work like a weighted average. This is similar to the way that final grades are calculated in school. There might be 3 quizzes worth 15% of the grade, a midterm worth 35% of the grade, and a final exam worth 50% of the grade. In this example, the final exam carries the heaviest weight, and it's the most important factor in determining the final grade. The quizzes are important, but if one doesn't go well, it doesn't have a big impact on the final grade. So the town collects property taxes for all 3 agencies, the region, the school boards, and the town. And then we pay the region and school boards their portion, and we keep 37%. The town of Lincoln uses its 37% of the property taxes to provide its services and programs. The region of Niagara, as the biggest component of the property tax bill, carries the heaviest weight. And the school boards, the lowest portion of the property tax bill, carry the lowest weight. So how is the blended increase calculated? This is an illustration. When budgets are set for a new year, the overall change in property tax is similar to a weighted average. There can be some minor differences because we have special levies for transit and waste management, for example. However, this is a general illustrative example of how the blended property tax change would be calculated if, for example, the region increases its property taxes 10.8%, the town increases its property taxes 7.87%, and the education rates are kept constant as they have been in recent years. As a hint, the blended increase is not 18.67%, which would be the region's increase plus the town's increase. The blended increase is not 9.34%, which would be the average of the region's increase and the town's increase. In this example, the blended change in the tax rate would actually be 8.53%. The region's increase of 10.8%, which carries the greatest weight at 52%, results in a 5.62% increase on the total tax bill. The town's increase of 7.87%, which carries a weight of 37%, results in a 2.91% increase on the total tax bill. The blended increase would be 8.53%, which is like a weighted average. So I've given my disclaimer. This is for illustrative purposes only. This doesn't mean this will be the outcome in 2025. The region has not approved its budget yet, and there are 3 levies for the region, but this is a good illustration of how that weighted average works. So if this were the outcome for 2025, this would equate to an increase of approximately $463 in property tax for that average house that we've talked about with an assessed value of $383,000. And of that $463, $300 would be from the region and $163 would be from the town of Lincoln. So I won't read through all these numbers, but this is an important slide because this gets us from the original draft proposed operating budget. It shows the decreases of $342,000 that are being proposed, and then the amended proposed tax levy operating budget. So to summarize, the 2025 draft operating budget proposes a tax levy increase on the Lincoln portion of the property tax bill of approximately $163 for the year. Of this amount, $62 is for increased transfers for reserves. So I know this is the part the CAO was emphasizing at the beginning in terms of stealing thunder, to say that a very significant portion of this is so that we can be investing in our capital program. $37 of it is for operations at the former BDSS site so that we can seize that opportunity that was a one-time opportunity. And $64 for operating cost increases so that we can continue to provide high levels of service. A total of $163 for the average residential household for the year. So where will that $163 go? This is a pie chart. We've already talked about the reserves, which is the biggest piece of the pie. We've talked about BDSS. We also have $16 for increased cost of utilities, software, insurance, and legal services. $5 for the Lincoln Pelham Public Library. $3 for the increased cost of benefit rates and overtime. You'll see that one's decreased from the previous graph because of the WSIB changes. $19 for personnel cost of living adjustments and negotiated and legislated pay increases, net of increased revenues and recoveries. $10 for environmental monitoring, vehicle and equipment parts, supplies and repairs, security patrol, and urban forestry, and then $11 for other miscellaneous changes. In summary, the 2025 draft operating budget now proposes an increase of $163 in the Lincoln portion of the property tax bill. That is 7.87% of the Lincoln portion of the bill, which works out to 2.9% of the overall property tax bill and 0.12% of 2024 average household income. If 2025 average household income is the same as 2024, which is unlikely because income tends to increase, Lincoln's portion of the property tax bill would go from 1.53% of average household income to 1.65% of average household income, which is approximately equal to the average for lower tiers in Niagara for 2024. So to review, here we are with our budget schedule. We are getting towards the end of inform, debate, approve. And if the budget is approved, recommended by committee and approved by council, then in January, we'll move towards the educate phase.
Thank you, Charlotte. Comprehensive and detailed. We thank you for that. We will open it up to committee for questions this evening. Councillor Timmers, please start us off.
Thank you very much, Chair Reimer. So I've got a few questions, but I'll keep it really brief because I'm sure other people have questions as well. So, and I can't get over the interest in the audience tonight. So thanks for coming out. So just through to the CAO around the FTEs deferrals. I need a little more information on that. How is that going to affect staff workload? And, you know, the priorities and what kinds of things are going to have to be put on the shelf for a while? I know that's kind of probably not a simple question, but if you could just give a little more info.
Mr. CEO, please go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and you're right, Councillor, it's probably not an easy question, but I will do my best to answer it. And we did really get into this at the last meeting, and so I'll try to repeat what we were able to share out of camera versus some of the in-camera conversations. Is there going to be an impact? Absolutely. Anytime we delay staff hirings, there's going to be an impact. One of the questions I think Councillor Murray asked was, how are we going to prioritize that work? And I think when we look at our work plan for 2025, we're going to have to come back to you. I think it's important to know there's mandated legislated positions, as Charlotte said. There's positions that are funded through water rates. There are positions that are funded through grants that we receive. And there's positions that are currently in the hopper. Those aren't positions I plan on stopping, partially because I can't, and partially because they're mandated and there's repercussions in doing so. There are positions that we have that are vacant. There's that natural gapping that happens, and those are the positions that we plan on deferring. But to your question specifically around what type of work, I think we're going to come back to you in the new year, as we often do with our work plans, and look at what are those things that can wait till later in the year. There's naturally a slowdown at different times of the year, and I think we can take council through some of that. But I wouldn't want you to think there's not going to be an impact. There absolutely is an impact anytime we defer hirings. Some I may defer longer than the first 2 quarters. Some I may defer less than the first 2 quarters. I think, if I was rewriting the motion that I was asked to look at the last council meeting, I'd probably put in there where applicable or where appropriate to provide a little bit of that flexibility, but hopefully that answers your question.
It
Councillor
does.
Timmers?
Thank you very much. And through you, Chair, I have another
Please go
question
ahead.
as well. So, I appreciate the work that's gone into this, and staff have really, you can tell, staff have really worked hard to bring something back to the table. But I always get, I don't know, I get concerned when we start cutting things or saying we're going to put it over to 2026, because then we're going to hit 2026 and we have to pay the piper eventually. We can't just keep pushing it ahead. So to me, I appreciate the work and I see these things that are being brought forward, but in the big picture of it, it seems very minuscule in my mind, the changes that, are being proposed. Anyway, long story, I'll stop talking and just ask my question around the parking study. Again, so I feel if we delay this, is it going to come back when we finally do decide, okay, we're going to do the parking study, is it now going to cost us more money? And in the end, we're just paying more because we've delayed. So I don't know who wants to take that question and if you can answer that or not.
Director Bruder?
Yeah,
Please go
thank you.
ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's hard to speculate. Something like that is relatively specialized. Costs do fluctuate from time to time. If we do delay it, I don't know if there's going to be a significant increase in what the cost could be. But again, it's kind of a little bit of crystal balling from year to year. We know, generally speaking, fees do go up. It's a question of how much. And I would probably estimate that it wouldn't be anything too crazy. But again, honestly hard to say.
All right, okay.
Part of that, Counselor Timmers, too, was to coincide with our work on BDSS, so there might be some, correct, there might be some overlap there, Director Bruder, so maybe we'll catch it on some of that work, too, so.
Okay, I do have some other questions, but I'll leave it and let
Okay.
other people have a chance, so.
Thank
you.
Counselor Timmers. Counselor Njima, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Reimer. When I first read this motion earlier on, the way it was written, I thought that it was for the entire 2025 year, for the whole year. Now that I see that it's till the end of Q2, I'm still a bit concerned for similar reasons to Councillor Timmers. I know that planning always has not to center anybody out particularly, but I know that there's always a lot of pressure on the planning department, and there's ongoing work, and that there's work that we want to achieve related to BDSS, and really kind of the sooner the better, for reasons I brought up before. If we think that we're going to be selling a part of that property, there's work that has to be done before we get into those discussions. So through you, Mr. Chair, to the CAO, or to whoever, I guess to the CAO, do we feel that we can still achieve all that work with the delayed hiring, and do we still think is it a good idea?
Mr. CAO, and then I think Mr. Bruder has some comments, too. Please go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor's question. I think where the question maybe comes from, or at least the conversation on hiring delays, a big part of any budget, especially municipal budgets, is staffing costs. So when we're looking at where are we going to make impacts, which council wanted us to, I think inevitably we start focusing on that. Can I tell you that delays aren't inevitably going to result in delayed hiring won't result in delayed projects? It will. I think, though, we're going to prioritize and look to minimize some of those impacts. Is BDSS something we're focused on right now? We have been focused on for the better part of the last quarter of this year and will next year, yes. Can I tell you things will come to you as quickly as they currently come to you in the first 2 quarters of 2025? No, I can't tell you that. I think we are going to have to come back to you. There are going to have to be things that are shelved. That inevitably happens when we look at cutting staffing. I also understand, though, as a taxpayer, that we need to do our best to make sure that any increase, whether it be 2.91 on the whole, whether it be 3.91 or 4.91, whatever that amount is something that people can digest. We're cognizant of that. Council has spent a number of meetings reflecting on that particular piece. And so you got to balance those two things. And so how do we do that? We look at the biggest line item. Affordability has been a concern of ours. It's always been a concern. It's raised around this table. But I'm sure that the team that you have here and throughout the organization will be nimble, will be able to accomplish things. Director Bruder can tell you how he plans on doing that from a planning perspective, but I think each one of the directors and managers that are here sitting to my right could also tell you how they're going to look to prioritize their work. And this isn't just us during the budget process, it's us throughout the year.
Director Bruder, do you have something to add to that? Please go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, not a whole lot. I think our CAO put it as eloquently as it could possibly be. But yeah, ultimately speaking, we do have a number of items on the work plan for planning, in addition to processing planning applications, which I don't think I have to remind anybody, that needs to take priority as well, because we're mandated to do so, and within certain, mandated timelines. We've been able to do that. We're going to continue to do that with the complement that we have, but there are other items, other initiatives. We're prioritizing, of course, BDSS, but there are other things that we do have on the work plan, and we're going to have to shift some priorities around. To be honest with you, I don't have an exact structure on how we're going to do that yet, but that is something that I do continue to look at. But in terms of prioritizing what must be done within a certain timeline, we're going to maintain that level, of course.
Okay, so questions of clarification, through you, Mr. Chair. With BDSS, there's operating costs, and there are going to be continued operating costs, and presumably if we're severing off some of the land and selling it, which, again, we haven't really gotten to the nitty-gritty of the discussion of that, presumably that'll decrease our operating costs. And I think that's why we're making that a priority. So am I hearing that that's not taking any kind of a back seat, because in my mind, we're kind of losing money if we have continued in new operating costs with BDSS, and we have the potential of limiting those operating costs by severing off some of the land and moving off some of our responsibility. Am I hearing that we're still going to be able to prioritize that to the extent that we could before these proposed staff FTE hires are being put on the back burner?
Mr. CEO, please go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, maybe a couple points of clarification to Councilor Rajima. Operating costs are to the existing building, but notwithstanding that, Councilor, I plan on being in front of you in 2025 and asking you to make a decision one way or another. And that decision, without presupposing what you're going to decide and what the community weighs in on, likely will have us doing something with part of that site that minimize future costs and hopefully pays us back. So is BDSS a top priority? Absolutely it is. And any of these changes or any of these cuts or any of these delays in hires are not meant to delay key projects that we have. We will prioritize these key projects, and if I thought that I could find you more savings by cutting even more, that's what you would have in front of you. I don't think we can do that. I think what we've presented here is a number that is defendable, doable, and allows us to achieve a lot of the work, not all of it, but a lot of the work, and that's why you have the number you do in front of you.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you very much.
Director Buer, you're okay?
Yeah, okay.
Counselor?
And I do have another question.
Please go ahead.
Please. Thank you for the presentation and the work that you've done to get us to this point today, to this discussion. The increased penalties in interest on taxes, that amounts to $1.71 estimated impact on average annual residential property tax, and it's $20,000. So I looked up our existing bylaw for fees and charges. Can't find it right now, but I had it in front of me. So how is that changing? How are there exactly? It's 1.75 or something like that
Charlotte,
in the
please go
existing
ahead.
bylaw.
Through you, Chair, to the counselor. So we're not changing the fee. The town charges 1.25% per month on property tax arrears, and most of our arrears are accounts receivable, and that's typical for municipalities across the province. What we're doing is changing our estimate of how much we'll collect. And we did that based on a review of historical. The risk becomes that as we improve our collections and our receivable balance goes down, then at some point we have to decrease that revenue budget. So again, it's an item that we think is achievable for next year, but then that pushes it to a future year when we do have to make that adjustment. So we're not changing what we're charging people. We're changing our estimate of what amount we think will be outstanding next year. It's close. So, I mean, we came initially with the budget we thought was appropriate. We're just looking for savings to try to respond to the direction of committee. But it doesn't mean anything additional is being charged to people. It just means it's shifting that impact, and we'll have to right-size it again in the future if we start to improve the collections and decrease that balance.
Okay, that helps. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. That's all my questions.
Thank
for
you,
now.
Councilor Rajima. Councilor Mikulik, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair Reimer, through you to Charlotte. I think there's nothing better than the discussion that we're talking about cuts, because clearly when we start talking about cuts, we generate interest amongst the community. And I think it's fantastic that we have all these people here in the chambers being part of this discussion, because I don't recall ever seeing this many people here before, and they're all taxpayers. They all pay taxes, and, you know, granted, they seem to be, for the majority, part of a specific group, the firefighters, from what I can see. Question I have is, like, you know, last budget, we were presented with a 9.4% increase, which I think is high. Overall, I was hopeful for 7.5. We're coming at 7.87. I think realistically, this is where we're going to end up. So the question I have is, you know, as it's 7.87, increase, and we're talking about, you know, the average house being worth $383,000. That's not what my house is worth, and I'm not sure how many people's houses are worth $383,000, and I don't know if everyone's making $134,000 per household. So what roughly would that equate to, like 163? If my house was, say, worth $600,000, what would that roughly equate to for, let's say, myself, if my house was 600,000, which might be a more realistic number?
You want to go ahead with that, Charlotte?
Sure, through your chair to the counselor. So I think where I want to be careful in case, you know, we do have some people in the gallery and also some people online, what your house is worth. So just I want to make sure that people don't think that their property tax is based on their current market value. Their property tax is based on their assessed value. The average assessed value of $383,000 that we're giving here is from MPAC. That is the average assessed value in Lincoln. But yes, to your point, if it's an average, that means some people are less than that. So some people will pay less than $163 more, and then some people are more than that and they'll pay, you know, more than $163 extra. So if they have a house that's double the value of the average in Lincoln, then they would pay about double the increase. That's basically how the math works. So I don't know if you need me to calculate
No.
the actual number,
No,
but
I just-
I just do want to assure that these averages, the MPAC average assessed value, it's from an external source. That's what MPAC is giving us. And the average household income is also from an external source, from the BMA municipal study. And they take it from, I think it's municipal data mining, I forgot the word now. But it's all from external sources and it is supposed to be factual. But yes, when you deal in averages, you're always going to have some above, some below, some in the middle. You know, it's the best estimate we can give you of what the average impact will be.
No, I appreciate that answer, but, you know, those averages could be skewed a bit because of all the condominiums that have been built recently that might have kept that number, that 383, to maybe not a number, because I know my personal residence is certainly worth a lot more than 383, but I can figure that out. So now, on slide 16, we talk about affordability, 1.65 of the household income. Is that, when we talk about the 130, is that after tax dollars, or is that before tax dollars? Because if you're making $134,000, you're not really, you might only be taking home maybe 80, 70. So is that number, that percent of household income, after take home or before?
It's before. It's
Before.
before tax. So it's
Okay.
on the gross average household income of $134,000.
Okay, so just, again, like, it's just moving forward, future budgets, like, we have to look forward to what affordability looks like, year over year, especially with the increases in the past number of years that, you know, we've had. So that's why, for this budget here, I'm thankful for the departments that took a second look at their budgets, those that have made adjustments to make this more palatable. I appreciate that. Moving forward, we'll see what we have to do to remain sustainable. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Murray, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you to our treasurer. Thank you very much, Charlotte. I appreciate you going over this stuff again because I know that not everyone's listening all the time, so good to repeat some of these things. I'm looking at slide number 15, which is showing your pie chart. It's not a complicated question. I'm just looking for a little bit of clarity because I'm not sure that I fully understand. We're on, the yellow one is personnel costs of living adjustments and negotiated legislated pay increases, net of increased revenues and recoveries. And I'm wondering about that net piece because I don't know what revenues we have that are directly tied to personnel costs. So I was wondering if you can clarify what that calculation looks like.
Just hold on a minute, Charlotte. We're just going to put that up on the big screen. Then you can speak to it.
slide 11, no, sorry,
No,
slide
15.
15.
Yep, that's the one.
15, thank you, you're there. The
Yep.
yellow patch there. The question I have that is that net of increased revenues and recoveries, what kind of revenues and recoveries are tied to personnel costs?
Please go ahead, Charlotte.
Thank you, through you, Chair, to the counselor. I don't have an exhaustive, I could get an exhausted list, but I'll tell you the ones that I know offhand. One is the transfer from the Tax Rate Stabilization Reserve Fund. And the reason we applied that to these savings are because the balance that was in there was effectively gapping from 2023. So because it was as a result of gapping and vacant positions, it seemed appropriate to offset the wage impacts of this year. I have had other places that I've worked that we had a reserve specifically related to those wage changes, so it's an option in future rather than budgeting in those gapping dollars you put into a reserve and then you pull from the reserve when you need for staff-related initiatives, but we just haven't gotten to that point yet. We also have, for example, to offset fire increases, we have new proposed fire false alarm fees. So that was something that we also considered because there are costs related to those responses, so the revenue is then being used to apply related to those responses. We have in museum, for example, they cut their budget for supplies in order to add a bit more part-time hours that were really, really important to them. We have the decreased costs of the DMO being applied in order to help offset some of the cost pressures in that department towards grant writing. So it's those types of items, those are the big ones I can think of off the top of my head. So that number is the net of those, because I can't really have a negative pie piece. So when I'm trying to, I've thought about it, when I'm trying to kind of summarize this to say, what's the story? Like, what are these increases? What is the impact on the average person and what's it related to? I try to find those related revenues, and I think we really looked for those items to try to help offset the staffing cost impact this year.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Charlotte. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. Councilor Brunei, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Reimer. Through you to the CAO. Mike, I'm hearing some things around the chamber tonight about the asks that we've made. So I'm just going to come out and ask you. I think you've always been pretty straight shooter with us. So I'm asking you this question because I'm a little concerned about what I'm hearing. We asked you to go back and make some cuts, and you talked to your CLT. Are you coming back with these cuts because you think you can achieve them without, grossly impacting, the work that we need to do, or are you just coming back to us because you're throwing us a bone? And I don't mean that question with any malice, but I'm really trying to put context into what we're trying to do here, as a council. And I'll follow those questions up, but I'm just wondering if you could, seriously answer that question, and please don't take it with any malice or any disrespect, but I think it's a good starting point.
We'll just break if someone has to leave. Just hold, Mr. CO.
Boy, I really know how to clear a room, eh?
Be safe, gentlemen, be safe. It's okay.
Buy yourself some time.
Okay, we'll return here. Mr. CO, you're okay with the question? Need it repeated? You're all right?
No, I'm okay. I remember the question.
Thank you.
And like you, hopefully everyone is safe. Counselor, it's a good question in the sense of, and I'm going to give you an honest answer. I wouldn't have put in front of you something that I don't think was appropriate or could defend or could deliver on. So at the end of the day, I think what you've got in front of you is a budget that is appropriate. Is there often those opportunities where, I wish I didn't have to come back with these sorts of things, of course, but I also understand that is often the challenge or the dilemmas that we deal with. I wouldn't have come back to you if I didn't think this was something that we could deliver on. And I think Charlotte highlighted it. Where I ask for your flexibility is some may be longer than Q2, some may be less than Q2, and I think we've highlighted that. And I know Council, I think, the intent of the motion was that, to provide a little bit of that flexibility, but to find savings in that particular line item. So I stand by what I've put in front of you, and I think it's appropriate.
Counselor?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I asked that question only because I think it's appropriate that you have a chance in public to defend what you're doing. Like, we're not putting you in a corner, we're not asking you to do something that you can't do. If you couldn't do it, as you've done in the past, you would come back to us and say, we're as tight as we can, this has been tough deliberations, and we're up against the wall, and we cannot, we cannot go any lower.
Mr. CO?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, I think the cautionary note maybe I'd give myself in responding back is there will be less work that we inevitably have to do, Councillor. I wouldn't, I'm not telling you that we can do the same amount of work with 3 or 4 or 5 less people in each of the departments. So there will be an impact.
Right.
But I think that impact is something that I'm going to come back to you with in the new year and tell you this is going to get delayed, and that may get delayed. It is a little bit more of a piecemeal way of doing it versus, I think looking at a work plan. But again, I've been doing this long enough to realize this is sometimes the way things go, and these are the conversations that we were having even before you directed us. What is the fallback should council send us back? And what won't get done, and what staff won't get hired, and how do we address some of these things? So absolutely stand by, the decisions I think we made as a team.
So through you, Chair, just to follow along with that.
Please go ahead.
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. So, since we've identified our debt threshold and we've looked at our reserves and we've looked at prioritizing projects, the word prioritize will continue to be, at the front of our mind, collectively as a council and as staff as we try to lead this organization forward.
Mr. CO?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the simple answer to that, Councillor, is yes, we need to prioritize. I've always said to you I could do anything you want, just a matter of time, money, and resources. But at the end of the day, we do need to prioritize. We need to have a very sustainable, systematic plan for how we do things. And again, a big part of this budget, almost half of it when I look at the pie charts, is us putting money in the bank to deal with infrastructure. I think that is prudent. Is it an easy thing to sell people and tell them, yeah, let's put money in the bank because we need to pay for infrastructure, and those are good, sustainable things to do? Not everyone's going to say, well, that's a good use of money, but I would tell you, I think if we look back and look forward, putting money in the bank's a good thing. We need to pay for infrastructure. There's a shortage. If you give me just a little bit of leeway, Councillor Mikulik
go ahead.
mentioned some high tax increases. I do think it's important to highlight 21 and 22. We had the lowest tax increases anywhere in the region during the pandemic. And that was a conscious decision council made, and the right decision at the time. I'll stand by that as well. That does mean at times we're playing catch up for certain things. And so those are kind of eyes wide open decisions. All municipalities fluctuate, high at times, lower at others. Oftentimes, though, I think what you'll hear finance CFOs, finance directors tell you is sometimes those low increases are artificial. They're hard to achieve, they're hard to do, and not necessarily always the right thing to do, but we do them because, as I've said to you numerous times, the pandemic, I'm not sure most people knew what was happening in the subsequent years, and so we were cognizant of taxpayers in those 2 years.
Counselor?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just have a couple other questions.
Sure, go ahead.
So through you, Chair Reimer, with regards to the reduction from the 80,000 to the 60,000 in the heritage bracket, I'm wondering if, for clarification, whether staff, maybe Mr. Bruder, can comment on, what that does in relationship to where we are with the HDC study. We've had AECOM working for us for the last 18 months. We're at a point where we need to continue to fund that if we're going to move forward. So I'm just wondering if someone could clarify as to whether this reduction puts that on pause or just what that means in terms of specifically to the HDC.
Director Bruder?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. It does. It would probably mean, I don't think it means that we delay the HCD process. And AECOM, they took it to a preliminary point. Then we held off knowing that we were going to take the next step. That step now, instead of going at it probably, right at the beginning of 2025, it'll probably be something that maybe gets initiated mid-year. So there will be an impact to the timing. I'm still hoping we can start the work on that next year. But yes, it won't be at the beginning of the year.
Counselor?
Thank you, Chair. Additional question?
Yep, please go ahead.
I'm wondering, on the money that's being deferred from, or shared, I guess, 25 to 26 with the irrigation, in any way, shape, or form, does that impact in terms of monies that are being put in St. Catharines and Niagara Lake? In other words, is the fact that we're not putting in 50,000, is that impacting them negatively, that they're having to put in additional money because we're not putting in 50,000 this year?
Mr. CAO?
Through
You got
Mr.
this
Chair,
one?
I did actually speak with Sarah Marshall, who is kind of the co-lead with Ontario Tenderfruit of that project, and did make the suggestion to her that we would look to break up that payment. She said that she didn't see that as a problem, and that would not impact the other municipalities that are partnering with us on that particular initiative. I can tell you they were a little slower than they anticipated in terms of their work plan, in terms of where they're at. So this makes a little impact to them in terms of their partner agencies, but a significant impact to us in terms of breaking it up.
Counselor?
Yes, so Chair Reimer, if I could just, if you could just give me some latitude, just to make a
I'm going to
couple.
give you some latitude. Go ahead.
Couple of comments. So I do appreciate very much staff going back. We started at around, for argument's sake, 9.4%, and we're down to 7.87. And one could say, well, these are minuscule, or use whatever word you want, changes. But I believe what the CAO said is something that is a very important messaging coming out of this budget, is that we are making an investment for the future with a 3% infrastructure fund, as well as almost 1.5% to the future site of BDSS. So once you take that 4.4% at where we would now be if we adopted 7.87, we're coming in with less than a 4% budget. And I think that is something that is very commendable, and I think it demonstrates and we're all taxpayers, that we take our role seriously. And I don't want to make any misconceptions. Councillor Timmers made a comment, and it's a very valid comment, that just pushing stuff back sometimes is not the best. But next year will be an election year, and sometimes in election years, the monies are not spent and are waited and pushed into another term. So I'm not suggesting for a moment that will happen, that there's no infinite determination on what's going to happen, but I think that is also in play, as well as next year will be a budget year for an election year. So I really appreciate all the work that staff has done, and I'm very supportive of if we do land, not supposing that it will, but if we do land at 7.87, I think that is a good number, and I think staff has done a lot of work to get to that number, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Counselor Brunet. Mayor Easton, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm always interested to see what happens when the council decides to take the budget that the staff have raked through pretty seriously because of the piecemeal adjustments. So just let me share with you, Mr. Chairman, briefly, that one of the important points in all of this tonight, and this isn't putting any pressure, this is a reality. We have a planning department that's operating with some very, very, very strict legislation. That will be priority. It will be such a priority that there will be fallout. And that fallout is going to have to be taken up by smaller departments or departments that don't have work going on in them that relates to the planning projects that have been approved. That's a reality. So part of this is going to take some considerable discipline from us to ensure that time is of the essence for absolutely every staff member. So I respect that it is our right to ask questions, and not only ask questions, but recommend changes. But when we make the changes, the budget is now ours. We now assume the responsibility for the outcome, not the CAO. He had that already figured out with his staff. So now we're going to live with that, and we just need to be very, very conscious of what it is that we're doing. Now, this draft budget adjustment, my question, Mr. Chairman, is really, do we consider this as an omnibus? I would like to take out anything that is a direct impact, that isn't a mitigation, but is a direct impact, and vote on each one of them separately. I don't know what that would entail. It wasn't set up that way, but this is a lot of this is a lot to be taken into one budget.
Can we ask what slide you're looking at, Mayor Easton? We'll put that up.
I'm looking at page 4, so I'm assuming that it's called the 2025
Slide 4,
draft
please.
budget, proposed adjustments. I think there are things in there that could be separated out, but I'm concerned to just do that arbitrarily without some guidance.
Thank you, Mayor Easton.
I think I've reached the end of my tether, Mr. Chairman, when it comes to budgets that don't responsibly deal with the priorities. We have always set priorities in this town. It's never, ever been any different. We're tightening down, and we need to do that. There's no question about it. But this business of zero-based budgets and just kicking the can down the road is totally unacceptable. I don't believe that we're doing that, but I would like the right to be able to vote separately on these matters.
Mr. CEO, do you have anything to add to that or some guidance forward with that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, so looking at which ones would fall into, I think what the mayor is suggesting versus a motion that looks at each of them individually, I think really the mayor is speaking about delay staff FTE hiring. So let me repeat that. So I think what the mayor is suggesting is not actually in, I think she's going to categorize these in ones that are impacting work plan items or staffing items. And so there's really 3 that fall into that category, I would suggest. The 2 reductions for heritage and climate change and the FTE hirings. I don't necessarily think you need to vote on all of them in terms of each and every one individually. However, I'm in council's hands. As I said, we've got a recommendation here in front of you, but should council want to go in a different direction, that'll be something that council can direct us to do.
Well, Mr. Chairman, my response to that is, I don't understand the reduced budget for heritage designations. We sent 2 letters to the minister. We delegated with the minister, once formally, once informally, on the fact that we needed to move quickly. And now we're removing the funding to do that, and I don't understand that. It certainly doesn't send a distinct message about what our priority was. So that's, I'm having some difficulty with that. So I'm not getting the direction that I was looking for, because I do want to vote separately on the delayed hiring. Some of these have mitigation in them that I think have very, very little risk. The reduced budget for climate change work plan, we're either in or we're not in on climate change. So I would like to vote on that one separately. The budget for heritage designations, I would vote on that separately on the principle that that I just described to you. The irrigation project has been looked after. The UMF grant that's money So those, I would say that those are the areas that I would like to vote on separately, and I would also like to have a recorded vote on any vote that has to do with this budget.
Thank you, Mary Houston. Do you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
Can we just, we'll come back to that when everybody else has had their questions. It gives staff a bit of time to jig some things. Mr. CEO and Deputy Clerk, you have enough information for that? Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you, Mary Houston. Chair Patriva, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Reimer, and through you to staff, thank you very much for the report. Question with respect to, and I highlighted it, so reduced overtime budget in Public Works for winter control. So Charlotte, you had mentioned that was partly because we established a winter control fund a few years ago, right, to smooth off the peaks and valleys that we experience. Now, and I say this every year. So as we're doing that, and maybe this is a question to the CEO or the director, like, what kind of factors are we putting in place to try to limit the way that we operate, right? So, like trucks move, like the Sand Dome is here. It's the farthest point away from any place in the municipality, right? So trucks go back and forth, like things are operationally, we're incurring a cost that way. Like, is there going to be changes we're going to look at to minimize that? And then again, always, and I bring it up every year because I'm a firm believer in it, a living fence program that should work with the Conservation Authority. Rows of corn are left in, which act as a windbreak and cut down on drifting of snow, especially up over the hill. And, like one who lives down below, the world up on top is completely different, right? Winds are swirling, and I mean, you can only put up so much snow fence. But there's these natural things that, again, if we're invested and say we're going to be involved with climate change, then why don't we take advantage of some of these naturally occurring things? So just throwing that out for question number one, Chair Reimer.
Thank you, Chair Patriva. Dave, do you have some comments to that? Please go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. Appreciate the questions. I'll try and answer, I think there was a few questions in your comments there. I mean, generally speaking, we are always looking as a team within the Public Works Department to look at where we can do improvements, do efficiencies. That's an ongoing commitment we have for continual improvement. We debrief with our staff, get ideas from our staff on, they're out on the roads, where can we, be more efficient and improve things. So that's something that we just have embraced, and that's what we do. So we're always doing that. I think like a lot of this really depends on the type of winter we have. And I think, we do our best to try and look at past trends in terms of our costs, and overtime as well. Storms can happen, on weekends, at night, et cetera. So a lot of this is based on our trends, and I think council, was very responsible in directing staff a couple years ago to do the reserve, where we can start, putting some savings away. This 2024 season we're in, we had a pretty light winter overall, right? So we've been able to sort of put some of those surpluses away, and for a heavier winter, we can draw on where we're having pressures. Yeah, you're totally right. Above the escarpment, below the escarpment, totally different. We do have our snow fence program. I know, Councillor, you've been an advocate for the natural snow fence concepts. I mean, it is on our list with our climate adaptation plan in terms of looking at other, naturalized options. It has its challenges too, but I think, it is a good option where, it makes sense to consider those. So I think it is on the list, Councillor.
Okay.
on the climate adaptation plan list. So anyways, those are some comments. Happy to answer anything else.
Okay, and through you,
Counselor?
Chair. Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic to hear. And again, it's like the mayor alluded to it, is that reduction in the climate grant, are things like this going to be jeopardized going forward? So, and again, Dave, you're right. You know what? In a perfect world, snow would happen between 7 and 4 Monday to Friday. But that's never the case. I mean, going back, I think it was last year or the year before, every storm that we had was on the weekend. So again, maybe this is a question to the CAO going forward when we are discussing collective agreements and things like that, that, it's a shifting, municipal governance is a 365-day-of-the-year job. And everyone wants to work Monday to Friday from 7 to 4. But our lives aren't like that. The arena needs to run, the streets need to get plowed. So when we do have these additional hires coming on, will there be the flexibility in those for, I don't want to say, well, maybe multitasking or job sharing, Mike, where if they need to do one or the other, they're easily transitioned back and forth to meet the needs of what happens?
Mr. CEO, comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think, Councillor, when you think of collective agreements, union-type environments, that all of what you're suggesting is possible. I will say we do have a night shift, and the other thing I would highlight is we do use a rolling average. We don't just randomly say, this year we hope things are less snowy, we hope we have less inclement weather, and we're going to arbitrarily lower the budget because council wants to hit a number. That's not how we've done this. There's much more of an art and science. Charlotte working close with Dave and the operations team very much to look at what are our rolling averages and how do we do that. So I think that's how we land on a number. We land on a number, again, that I think is defendable. We were not, I want to say we were very conservative with some of the things we brought you. We haven't cut everything from the climate change work plan or the heritage work plan or every single staff vacancy that I can contemplate in my mind. When you look at all of these, and even the suggestions that you have, Councillor, we've looked at them and we've tried to, I think, crystallize where it makes sense. And looking at overtime in that particular area, looking at what we experienced last year, and looking at that rolling average, which does help us, I think, look at some of those ebbs and flows and smooth out kind of that year-to-year fluctuation is really what we're trying to do.
Okay, terrific.
Councillor?
And yeah, thank you very much. No, I appreciate that. And I know there's a science. We're not just throwing a dart at a dartboard and hoping for things. So second question, Chair Reimer, and it's, again, with respect to the delay in the hiring. So funny story. I took my vehicle in for service last week, and
The story will end with a question, Councillor.
it will, okay, yes, but
Just checking.
it's framing my question,
Got it.
Chair, So took it in and chatted with the owner of Euro Automotive, and I said, Raji, how do you like Durham Road? He says, Counselor, it's beautiful. He says, except I can't test my vehicles for suspension issues anymore. I go, what do you mean? He said, well, I would go down there with the windows rolled down, and I would be able to identify everything from the sounds it made. I said, well, we got to get you another road. So why don't you check out William Street? So my question is, will these delays impact, because we're supposed to bring William Street to the public for consultation early 2025, will there be any impact there? So hopefully not.
Thank you for landing the plane.
Through you.
Director, sorry, Mr. CEO, go ahead.
No, I mean, Director Graham can chime in. I think we were both going to tell you, no, there won't be delays, but I'll
Terrific.
let Dave confirm that as the subject matter expert.
Director Graham?
Mr. Chair, to the councillor, no, we aren't anticipating any delays with that.
Beautiful. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Patriva.
Worst street in town. Yes, it is.
Deputy Clerk, do we have that motion that, do we need a seconder for that, or we're good?
No, so it's going to be.
We're good? Okay? And we're going to address that before the Sorry for the delay, but we'll put the, Vice Chair Russell, I see you've joined us too. Thanks for coming.
Yes, Chair, I will put it up. I just want to clarify that it's going to be 3 separate motions as per Mayor Easton. She asked for those 3 items to be pulled. It is, so you will be approving the deduction or the addition of the line item, okay? So with this,
Let's see it first,
Yeah,
and then
this
then we
one.
can speak to it.
so as moved by Madam Mayor, the vote will be that the delay staff FTE hirings of 156,013 be approved. So you would be approving that delay in hiring the staff.
That's correct. Yes. Or not.
No, that's not correct, because that's what we're asking for in the, we want the opposite.
No.
Just wanted to
Chair.
clarify, because
Yeah, so-
the presentation had those removed from our budget,
Correct, and that's what this is suggesting here.
and now we're asking that that comes back in.
No, that the delay be approved.
Got it.
So I think that we're going to vote on
Thanks
those
for
three
helping me.
individually, and the rest, I think, are going to remain as a whole. So I think this is a recorded vote on 3 in particular. The rest, from what I'm hearing, council is supportive of. These are the 3 you want to vote on separately.
That works, Mayor Easton?
It works. Thank you.
And when we're ready for the vote, please go ahead.
Yep, and just a reminder, it's a recorded vote. Thank you. And that is open for you.
It's not working for me.
Councilor Regina, it doesn't look like you're logged in, but can I get your vote verbally?
I am not in favor of delaying.
You are a no. Okay, thank you. And I'm going to close that vote.
I appear to be logged in.
And that carries. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
The next motion is that the reduced budget for the climate change work plans of $10,000 be approved. Let me know when you'd like me to open that, and as a reminder, it will be a recorded vote.
Please open the vote.
Councilor Regima, I can take your vote verbally if you'd like.
I am in favor.
You are in favor? Thank you. And I will go ahead and close that vote. And that carries. And Chair, give me a second and I'll do the next one. And that motion is moved by Madam Mayor, and it is that the reduced budget for heritage designations of $20,000 be approved. And please let me know when you'd like me to open that.
Please open the vote.
That is open for voting. Thank you.
I am not in favor.
You are not in favor. Thank you, Councilor Regima. And I will go ahead and close that vote. And that motion carries. Thank you.
Would you like to review those, Councilor Murray?
It's fine, I can look at the tape later, it's
Just asking Charlotte, do those affect numbers? They don't?
Through you, Chair, no, I believe that basically means the adjustments stand as they
Yep,
were
just want to make
presented.
sure. There be no further discussion or questions. I have a motion moved by Councillor Mikulik. That committee receive and file for information report FN-23-24 and presentation regarding the 2025 amended operating budget. And that committee directs staff to prepare an updated compliance report for expenses excluded from the 2025 budget as a requirement of Ontario Regulation 28409 under the Municipal Act 2001, and provide to council prior to the adoption of the 2025 budget. And that committee acknowledge that it has evaluated the capital and operational requirements for the town of Lincoln to ensure the efficient delivery of municipal services to the ratepayers of the town of Lincoln. And that committee recommends to council that the 2025 tax levy supported budget expenditures of $34,902,439 be approved. And that committee recommends to council that the 2025 budget be approved with a tax levy requirement of $26,288,752, and that staff be directed to prepare the annual taxation levying bylaw as required by the Municipal Act 2001 upon the setting of the tax ratios and requisition amounts by the Regional Municipality of Niagara and other applicable bodies. I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. And as a reminder, Madam Mayor requested a recorded vote, so this will be taken as a recorded vote. And that is now open for voting. And I'll close that, and that carries. Thank you.
Before we move on, Charlotte, did you have some other comments? Mr. CEO?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do want to, this is the time in the budget process where I get to thank people, both those watching and engaging and those that attended this evening, but also the CLT team that's here. A special thanks to Charlotte, Kate, Kayla, and a number of other people that I put a lot of time, effort. Ray, I'm going to miss someone, so please offer them my thanks, or I will tomorrow. But this is never an easy exercise. It's never an easy process. I can tell you, Charlotte and I were chatting before this meeting, and, there's times when you're involved in this and you feel great, and then there's other times when you're like, I wonder how people are taking my message or my comments, and it isn't easy. Each of these decisions are not things we go into lightly, so a huge thanks to Charlotte. I wouldn't be able to speak in front of you as confidently as I am and do if it wasn't for Charlotte being able I think to give me the confidence on what we've got here in front of us. And I know, Kate, you're a big part of that. Like I said, Kayla, Ray, and others. So my sincere thanks to you. And of course, the team. We had a lot of, I don't want to say drag them out fights across the corporate leadership and team table, but definitely some heated debates. And those are what you expect of us. I think that's what residents expect of us. And so I do thank members of council for your patience and my own team for their support.
Thank you, Mike. Number 9 on our agenda this evening is confidential items. We have no confidential items. Number 10 is committee remarks. Does committee have any remarks? Mayor Easton, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to acknowledge the work that the staff did on this budget. It was very obvious from the outset that really had gone through it very carefully, but also adhering to the strategic directions that this council finds has established as a very positive motivator to come up with a complete budget. The emphasis that's been placed on public safety in a variety of programming prevailed throughout, and we should be very proud of that. The comments that we've all made this evening are the comments that we should make on the budget. It's amazing to me, and I'll continue to hassle my colleague Councillor Pachariva. It's always about our most favorite projects. I think as long as we continue to understand that, we'll be able to get through. But that's the way it goes. We will have to listen carefully. We'll need to watch the nuances. We'll need to pay close attention. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of leeway, and I'm sure that we all understand that. When things get even tighter than they are, we'll have to have more of our direct conversations with each other. This is certainly going to be the year for that, and the public expect us to bear down, and we will. So thank you very much. We should be all very, very proud of the outcomes of this budget, and I look forward to another very, very productive year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. On behalf of Vice Chair Russell and myself, I'd like to say a big thank you to those in attendance tonight. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. And please extend that to the gentleman that had to leave early. Thank you to the mayor and council for reading through and working through all these budgets. It's something that I know we take seriously. It takes up a lot of brain space. It takes up a lot of our time. But I thank you for diligently working through that and for the debates that we had here. And thank you, as has been mentioned already, to Charlotte, CAO Mike, the Clerk's Department, and the rest of staff for their contribution to this budget process. I think council would all say that we're proud to be part of a team. I think there's times where passions and emotions, the mayor referred to our favorite projects, and I think we all have those. But I always felt that we're pulling together, that staff and council are not adversaries, but that we're all kind of pulling in the same direction. So thank you very much for that. There being no further business this evening, I call this meeting adjourned at